windows are open, yeah. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. We really, really appreciate you taking time to join us and help us as we launch this really important initiative, the Bettina Fund. My name is Christine Mungai. I am a writer and journalist. I'm also the curator of Baraza Media Lab. It's a Media Lab initiative here in where we are seeking to strengthen the Kenyan media ecosystem through different programs, events, and activities. And this is one of the ones that we are really excited about. We started being in conversation with Thomson Foundation about almost a year ago, at the beginning of this year. And I'm really, really excited to finally see this day. After many, many months of conversations, the application process, shortlisting, so much has happened, but I'm excited. Today, we're going to do this launch in the form of a panel discussion instead of it being the traditional straight up press briefing that we journalists on this panel and on the call are very familiar with. So quickly, I'm going to introduce our panel. And when they begin speaking, they can say more about themselves. I'm just going to do like a very quick one-liner. Joining me on the panel first is my colleague at Baraza Media Lab, Maurice Otieno. He's Executive Director at Baraza. And I'm excited to, for the first time, actually moderate a panel with him as a guest. He's usually in a different context, but I'm excited to hear what he'll share today. Also on the panel is Judy Kosgei, whose video is off for now, but she's familiar to many of us as a journalist, a colleague, I would say, in the media space, and now a communications and advocacy expert. And finally, we have Carol Creel, who's, again, another journalist on the panel. She is CEO of Thomson Foundation and with many years experience in media houses such as Sky and CNN. And I'm really, really excited to see what insights are going to come out of this conversation. So having done that quick intro, let me just say that on this webinar, on this panel, I'm wearing two hats. I'm wearing the hat that there's like my daily job, which is the Baraza Media Lab curator of Baraza. That's one role. But the other role, which I really feel is like more of me, is of a journalist. That's who I am. And many of us here, I'm seeing on the attendees list, are colleagues that we've worked with in the newsroom and in many other different contexts in media, and are very familiar with the challenges that women face in media because we've all lived through it. If you're a woman in media, I don't think your experience is different. I think we, in one way or another, we come up against the same issues and the same hurdles. So essentially, this is what the Bettina Fund is here to address. And I'm going to start this conversation by bringing Judy Kosgei in to start off for us. Judy, I'm so excited to be with you here on this panel. And I'd like to hear from you what excites you about the Bettina Fund, drawing from your experiences as a journalist.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everyone from Nairobi. And a hearty congratulations to the 12 journalists from Kenya who are going, the inaugural cohort actually of journalists who are going to be part of this noble process and mentorship program. So just before I answer that question, maybe I just say who I am. And my name is Judy Kosgei. I'm a communications for development and advocacy and content development expert with over 15 years of experience, having started in the newsroom What I do now, I am the head of communications at Worldwide Fund for Nature Kenya. And one of the things that I've been doing over the 15 years is helping to develop, implement, and support impactful in-country, in multi-country, as well as regional and international communications, media, and advocacy strategies and campaigns as well. And I've been able to do this in over 20 countries with over 30 in-country interventions across key regions in Africa, as well as the MENA region. Having said that, then I come back to your question, Christine. So what excites me about the Bettina Fund program? It's the opportunity and the mentorship. I started my journalism journey at a community radio station known as Sayare FM in between 2008 and 2007, 2008. I was still in campus and I would dedicate my weekends as a co-host at Moi University of a children's program. I was also a reporter for Newsround and Info Times, the campus publications that we stick up on notice boards and the student center, the hostels. I wrote my first ever newspaper story at a newspaper that has since wound up. It wound up some many years ago. That is Kenya Times. I know Pamela Udwakamimo, they knew about that, and the rest of the people who've been in this media space. For me, this was such a big achievement. And after I graduated from campus, I applied for internship at the Kenya Television Network. I got a placement at KTN. And KTN then was the #1 media house. And I was elated. I was in awe. When I was thrown into the deep end, I knew I wasn't a good swimmer, but I saw opportunity. But I had to keep afloat and perfect my skills in a space where I was interacting with celebrated and renowned journalists. The newsroom was fast-paced, and it still is. And as an intern, I was always paired with an experienced journalist after the editorial meeting in the morning between 8 and 9 a.m. or in the evening before when the docket stories were being assigned. Majority of them were so kind and they mentored us, they went through our scripts before we shared with the editor. I learned by observing, following them around sometimes, and even sometimes mimicking how they do it. It's very hilarious, but that's what we had then. So I explored and learned best practices from books, from the internet, and most importantly, from Kenyan female journalists. Because when I would look at them, I would see me and I was like, yeah, they're female and they're journalists. These female journalists reaffirmed to me and to many other female journalists in the industry unknowingly that we can do it. Veteran journalists present here today, like, Pamela Sitoni, Udwakamimo. When you are the BBC Udwak, you are telling us, the younger me, you can do it. And yes, we did it, thanks to the women in the media who came before us, the mentors who have given us so much, to the women here in the fourth estate without uttering a word. In your footsteps, we followed. And today, you're making a big statement that you will hold the hands of other female journalists. You will hold our hands. We will, you're telling other female journalists across Africa and in Kenya and in the world that we will help you navigate the newsroom. You're telling us journalism is changing, and it's changing fast. So what I'm saying is, what is in your place to change? In this space, you're reminding us that as women in the media, we can now show up fully. As mothers in the newsroom, we can do our part, because why? Impact has your face on it. So we have to be present. For me, I equate this opportunity, the Benita Fund, to an opportunity that I was given a few years back by Thomson Foundation. After winning the Thomson Foundation Young Journalist of the Year Award in 2013. It reminded me every day as I wind up that amplifying even a single voice, which is muffled by inequality, disease, marginalization, political forces, or discrimination, is worth the risk. And I always employ this basic criterion before I embark on any assignment. Does it change a life? Yes. Go for it, do it, tell his story, her story, their story, because if it doesn't change a life, it's not worth it.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And I relate so much with what you're talking about. When we really think about it, we are where we are because people believed in us, because people opened doors and held doors open until we were all the way in, right? But for women in media, the challenges are something that you really cannot sweep under the carpet, yeah? One of our, Morris is going to talk a little bit about Baraza Media Lab in just a minute, but one of our friends here at Baraza did a research about how the news fails women, and it was focus group discussions with rural and urban women in Kenya, and just basically getting to know how often do women speak in media, what kind of stories feature women as protagonists, as experts, and also how do women watching at home or listening at home to the news, how do they relate with the news, this thing called the news, right? So one of the things that they found is that there is this idea of women's voices being quite muted compared to male voices on media, women being quoted far less often than men, especially in the news that is deemed important, which in the Kenyan context is political and governance stories. Women are 8 times less likely to be quoted as sources in those so-called governance or leading stories. And of course, this translates to how interested women are in the news as audiences when they don't see themselves represented. So research is a big part of what informed the Bettina Fund, and in turn, earlier than that, informed the mission and the vision of Baraza Media Lab, and is the reason why Baraza is excited to be in partnership with Thomson Foundation on this. So I'm going to ask Morris right now. Morris, as Executive Director of Baraza, how do you see the Bettina Fund fitting into the goals and the vision of Baraza in Nairobi?
Thanks, Christine. I'm happy to be on this panel and just to share the thoughts and the workings of Baraza in line with what Bettina Fund is doing. For us, when we had the opportunity to have a chat with the Thomson Foundation around setting up Bettina Fund, it was an excitement because it was something that we've always been wanting to work on as an organization from the onset. And as Christina said, Baraza in itself was stemmed out of a research that was looking at the systemic challenges that the industry is facing, and also looking at systemic opportunities of what we can do as a collective. And one of it was the involvement of women in media, and not only involvement in media, but also involvement in higher level of management of media and decision-making roles that will enable to trickle down to also even the consumers who see, as Christina said, people who represent them speak like them, right? And we have a running joke in the office when elections are nearing. You hear people talk about it's a 2-man race, right? Even to demystify some analogies like that also just encourages that sort of like patriarchal establishment and rooting into media houses. So for us, it's completely aligned with our vision, our mission, our existence as an entity. And we believe by empowering already strong women within the ecosystem and within the sector, and connecting them to relevant resources who have a wealth of knowledge, then we better the society, because I think with a better and a more diverse media then we better the society in terms of how do we consume, how do we appreciate the content that is coming out of that. I don't know if I've answered your question, Christine, directly, but I just wanted to, first of all, give an outlay of how Baraza looks at this program and how we appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had a lot of interest in this program when we announced it about a month and a half ago. We had over 500 applications, and we have 12 finalists who are selected, and most of them I can see are here with us on the webinar. And we are pairing them up with 5 incredible women leaders in media. So the interest has really been immense. And Caro, I just want to bring you into the conversation now to talk about Thomson Foundation as the organization that birthed the idea of this fund and this mentorship program. Why mentorship? And what does success look like at the end? When in 3 months' time, or maybe in 2 years' time, after we've done 7 cohorts, right? Because this is not intended to be like a one-time program, but this is just the inaugural class, so the inaugural cohort. What does success look like, especially speaking from your vantage point, not just as CEO of Thomson Foundation, but as a journalist in your own right?
Thank you so much, Christina. It's lovely to be here. Congratulations to the mentees. Thank you to Baraza. It's terrific partnering with you. It's just a pity we haven't met physically yet, but I'm hopeful that's going to happen at some point. And I also want to say thank you to the mentors. These are top women. They are not they don't have a lot of time. I can tell you that without meeting them. They're top women in the media, but they're giving time to this project, and we're hugely grateful and thankful for that. A little bit about me and then about Bettina Fund. So I'm originally South African, been in London for more than 20 years, started my career in video, was at AP. I headed up international video for 7 years, did a stint in Moscow for AP, and then I was at Sky as head of foreign news and at CNN as director of coverage. And then Thomson Foundation came knocking only 3 months ago. But when I joined, my colleagues told me about this really exciting program that was set up in memory of Bettina Peters, who's the late director of development of the Thomson Foundation, who was a passionate advocate for equality and gender equality in newsrooms. And that's really where the idea started, and it's hopefully going to flourish with this collaboration with Baraza. I think for me, success would look at 3 different things. In terms of the mentees, professionally, as leaders, and as people, as women, what does this mean for them? Professionally, and I think we're really gifted here. We've got a group of women from different backgrounds, different places, different shapes and sizes of media organizations. So what I hope we can achieve through the Bettina Fund and this mentorship scheme, and of course, is the online courses that are free for the mentees to do, and of course, the webinars, is for them to grow as professional journalists, to grow their businesses, their newsrooms, so that they are sustainable. Key thing for us at the moment in our business. Secondly, for them to grow as leaders, as women leaders, as newsroom leaders. And that's not an easy thing. I think Judy said it so well when she said, when I was thrown into the deep end, I knew I wasn't a good swimmer. You know, show me a good swimmer amongst us today when you're new in a newsroom, when you're a young woman in a newsroom, or even when you've been in a newsroom for quite some years. Sometimes these are really challenging environments. So how can we, through this program, help women to find their voice, to be more confident, to be more comfortable, and to grow into leadership positions in newsrooms? And I think that has got to do with their personal development as well through this process. Secondly, I think success looks at the network that we will be able to establish between us and hopefully wider. We are starting small today, But I know from talking to Maurice that, we've got big ambitions with this program. We think we've got something special and we'd really like to grow it outside of Kenya. As Christine said, we had 500 applications for 12 places. That tells me there's a big need out there in Kenya and in other countries in the continent. So we'd love to grow it. And I think for me, the final thing of what success would look like is I hope everyone that's taking part in this will have a lot of fun in the process. You've been given golden time for 3 months. Use it, enjoy it. Having the opportunity to talk to your mentees, to your mentors, is a fantastic gift. So really, really enjoy it and have fun. It's not always easy in a newsroom. It's not always easy to grow a business or grow as a journalist and learn new things. But I really hope you're going to have a fun time and enjoy the program.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to pivot back to Judy for a minute. Judy, I don't know if you have experienced this in your career in journalism, and Caro as well, by the way, that there's all this talk of like inclusivity and women are important as journalists, as newsroom leaders. We need to grow our female audiences. But the approach that's usually taken is almost to corral women into a corner where they discuss women's issues, right? And then there's this assumption, because there's some little corner that's made for so-called women's issues, then that means that the media is inclusive. Yeah. I don't know how you see the Bettina Fund challenging that assumption, that the fact that we're having a program for women leadership in media is not niche, or it's not marginal to what the entire ecosystem is all about. Judy, how does that land with you?
The landscape has changed, but I can say I can't compare the media environment now and when I was in the newsroom in 2012, 2013. In the few years, there have been a lot of I can call it advocacy, and we've seen more women at the helm. Not the number that we would want to see, it's not balanced, but we know we've seen editorial directors. We've seen women lead and be editors of, big regional newspapers and media outlets. We've seen women take the lead in advocating for equal pay in the newsroom, because I think that's one of the things that actually, if you go to the newsroom and look at the pay, a male and a female journalist, there is always that disparity. Also in the newsroom, when you get into the newsroom, as a female journalist, you will certainly be given the soft stories when you begin. But we've seen journalists like Ashamili, for example, taking up political stories. We've seen Njoki Chege, like maintaining a whole column for a long period of time. We've seen Njeri Rugene being able to be a political commentator. So for me, I think the opportunity is there, the challenges are there. But if we focus on the challenge and not the solution, then we might just remain in that corner that someone somewhere has decided is reserved for women. But then we'll not put our heads in the sand and pretend that the problem is not there. How do we solve this problem? And this is what this fund is actually doing, the mentorship. Just having someone to tell you on a bad day, like, yes, you are a journalist. You're not, as much as someone can view you as a woman, I'm dealing with a woman. No, they're dealing with an experienced professional journalist. And that's why we're seeing more women reporting on politics. Before we wouldn't. And when I got into the newsroom and I was given, the opportunity, I was, always doing the soft stories. But then I said, what is it? What is the lemonade out of this? And I focused on change stories. I focused on advocacy, and I said every story that I do, there has to be an end, and that end has to be impactful. And one of my proudest moments actually is being able to advocate for a legislation that ensured that our girls in Kenya in public primary schools, in public institutions, secondary schools can actually get a free sanitary towels. So how do you take the opportunity that you have to tell that untold story? But then we know the problems are there. How can we be innovative and come up with solutions that can actually solve this? And we make sure that we stand and support the people that are coming, the younger journalists, so that they find it easier and they don't go the same route as we did.
Thank you so much for that response. I want to just give a highlight now that I'm going to be opening this up for questions in the next 5 to 6 minutes. So if you're on this webinar and you have a question for any of the panelists, just prepare your question, raise your hand, or type it in the chat window. And if you're following on YouTube, please go ahead and ask your question in the chat that's there, and we will bring it into this session to be answered. But Carol, I want to just pivot back to you and ask you how that idea of women's issues being in a corner versus women's perspective being part of perspectives in general, right? How does that land with you? And if you could also share, like Judy did, a success story in your time in the newsrooms.
Oh, success story. What I would say is that, let me take this back to how you started the question originally about, is what we're doing a bit niche by having this program? I would say it's not niche, it's needed, because we see lots of women going into our industry and into our business in lots of places in the world. And if you look at the figures, whether you're on the African continent or you're working in Europe or wherever, there aren't always that many women that actually rise to the top. Yes, there are some, and we're very lucky today to have some of the mentors with us who are women who are absolutely at the top of the organizations. But the figures are a bit skewed. And I think that is sometimes because of barriers that are put up, sometimes also because it takes skill sometimes to navigate some of these newsrooms in order to get to those positions. And that's why I think that the fund is important, because by learning, having the opportunity to learn about your trade and your craft at a time when our business is really changing a lot is the first kind of weapon that you need in your armory to move through the ranks. So, I would really encourage the mentees to look at the courses on media audience research, storytelling, building a trusted brand, because whatever media you are in at the moment, and whether you are working for it or you're running it already or you're an entrepreneur, those are skills you're going to need to lead now and in the future. But secondly, I think there are skills, and I'm sure this will come up in the sessions with the mentors, that will hopefully help our mentees on the skills to navigate structures in newsrooms. How do they find their voice? How do you, make sure that the work that you're doing is noticed, and that you can plot a course and chart a course if that's what you want to end up as a manager or a leader in a news organization. And the other thing I would say is just that what I'm struck by is there are entrepreneurs in this group of mentees that we've got. I've got so much respect for someone who is starting their own media organization. It's something that I've never done. To learn skills through this, to create sustainable media organizations that employs journalists is really important, and probably comes back to this whole notion of storytelling, which you were asking me about. You know, you don't really want people to be pigeonholed in one way or another to tell one specific story. What you want to have is thriving newsrooms that can do interesting fact-based stories about a whole range of topics that resonates with their audiences and that gets people to read and to pay and to sustain. And that's the way you get a healthy ecosystem. But the role of leadership and where people end up in those newsrooms, of course, is really important in the process.
Thank you so much for that. And that brings me to what I wanted to ask Maurice as our last question on this section of today's program before opening it up to Q&A. I see some Q&A questions already coming in. Please do type in the chat window or raise your hand and I'll make a mental note to unmute you and to allow you to speak. Maurice, Carol has just talked about entrepreneurship, which is something that I know is close to your heart. How do you see the Bettina Fund working into that dream or that desire to have a thriving ecosystem, which of course includes people taking great risk as entrepreneurs, to really do this, the heavy lifting and the heavy work of being a media startup? How do you see the Bettina Fund and Baraza as well supporting that kind of risk taking?
That's a good question, because yes, as you rightfully said, entrepreneurship is something that's close to my heart, because that's the heart that I wore in my previous roles. And for me, merging the two, sort of like entrepreneurship in media, is something that I think would be somewhat a step in the right direction to find sustainability for our media houses. All over the world, you find research and upon research that is showing how the revenue models for media is depreciating and the models are not working. So with that, and the Bettina Fund and the mentorship that is provided within that space, and the patience and the platform that Baraza offers for people to experiment on the crazy ideas that they have. We recently just launched our incubation. But with that learning and that sort of like resource that we have from our incubation, moving that expertise to handle and help some of the Bettina mentees, just to think through the business models and the sustainability models of their businesses, will be something that will be very keen, at least on my end, to just see succeed. Because at the end of the day, as much as there is the element of journalism, which is the main beat of the work, we do need to have it sustainable in order for us to continue telling the stories. We need to exist so that we can continue telling the stories that are much needed. And I think Baraza's experimental mind frame is something that I think will be very instrumental as we go into the Bettina Fund fellowship.
All right, thank you so much for that, Maurice and Judy and Carol. Your insights have been so enriching and have really put this program and this initiative into a really robust context, so that we understand that it's not just another mentorship program, which these days you can come across all over this town, but that it has taken so much time to really think about the problem and to think about how this program can intervene in supporting us as journalists and as storytellers. So I'm just going to begin to direct the questions that are coming in. One is from Joki. Thank you for joining us today, Joki Chege. Joki says, this is a brilliant initiative. Congratulations to Thomson Foundation and Baraza for spearheading this. How can we scale this great initiative across East Africa? Maybe, Carol, you can take that about scaling. I know that, of course, replicating this in other contexts and in other countries and markets and ecosystems is really important to the vision of this program.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I think, firstly, it's about making this pilot phase a big success. And listening to the conversation, it sounds to me like it's off to a very good start. And then building on it. And I think doing two things, being loud and bold and vocal about what we learn from it, and hopefully about the success that comes from it, that we could raise funds in order to expand it in other countries on the continent, and maybe even inside Kenya again, or outside, definitely outside its borders. But I think that's it. It is about building blocks. It's about taking what we do now and nurturing it over the next 3 months, making sure that people know we're doing it. Yes. And then with some funding, building on that through our partnership to try and expand it outside of the borders. Maybe Maurice has got some thoughts to add to that as well.
Maurice, go ahead.
Yeah, so I also wanted to say, I'm really excited at the potential of the program itself, first of all, expanding to other regions of the continent. But I scale back a little bit on that thought and look at what it has done just now within the context of Kenya, where you find most of these kind of programs in whatever sector, in either media or entrepreneurship and innovation, they are almost Nairobi-centric, right? Where you just find the applicants and it's almost contextualized only for Nairobi. The excitement that I have for the outcome that we've already seen in this program is the number of quality applications that we found out of Nairobi, from people from Marsabit to Kisumu to Nakuru. That in itself is exciting, and that in itself gives us more hope that it's a continental-wide problem, but not just a Nairobi-centric problem that we're trying to solve for. So yes, I do think there's an opportunity for us to go across in other regions, but I do also appreciate the fact that even within Nairobi, we've managed to, within Kenya, we managed to go out of this city.
Thank you so much, Maurice, for saying that, because that is an important, I would say, milestone or thing to note already about this program, is that we are already outside the usual circles, I would say. I'm excited about the group that are starting off this program, really diverse from many different corners of Kenya. So just a couple more questions are coming in. Jennifer, thank you for joining us today. Jennifer asked, beyond mentorship and training, what else will the fellows be involved in? Judy, I'd like you to just weigh in on this, on the aspect of networking and community, that being involved in a program like this introduces you to being part of a certain network and cohort that I know as a fellow yourself of this foundation that you have benefited from.
I know it's cliche, but they say your network is your net worth, right? Your network is your net worth. So in terms of networking and being able to meet women leaders in the industry, I think it's a great opportunity beyond, the webinars, the one-on-one session with your mentor, but then it's an opportunity to expand your network from local to global. I'll give you an example. When I won the award at Thomson, the Thomson Foundation Foreign Press Association, a Young Journalist of the Year 2013, I was given an opportunity actually to be a panelist in one of the biggest conferences for women called the Women of the World Conference. The Women of the World, Women of the World, yes, conference in London. And through that conference, I was actually able to determine like my future in terms of my career. I knew from that moment when I sat in the podium with women from across the divide, and majority of them are advocating for human rights and also governance. I knew my place, like my time in the newsroom was over, but my time as a journalist wasn't, because once a journalist, forever a journalist. And that's when I moved into the women rights space and expanded my worldview and met new people, learned new things. And that's when I decided, I said, while, embarking on my doctorate, my PhD, then I would like to focus on something on Africa and on African women. And that's how I ended up actually being motivated by what happened in 2013 in London. Because of the opportunity given by Thomson Foundation, I was able to take up my PhD, the course at the University of Nairobi, a PhD in African Women Studies, which I'm finalizing. But then while still at that space, we never lost contact with Thomson Foundation. I think if there's an organization that has always wanted to know what I'm up to, what I'm doing, what next. So two things make me tick. Human rights and also advocating for natural resource governance. Because when you come to natural resources, just like in the newsroom, women are always left out. Women are always forgotten. When we are talking about equity, we are talking about gender mainstreaming, we forget that there are sectors like the natural, in natural resources, you get very few women in conservation. And that's how I ended up at WWF. So I think it's beyond the 3 months. This is a long-term relationship. You're the first cohort. It's like the inaugural. You're getting everything. We have to get this right so that the people, the younger people, those still, the younger journalists that are coming after us will be able to benefit from this. And I believe this will be one of the most, like a success story. Benita was alive today, wherever she is, I know she's happy to see this happening. So let's take this opportunity, network, reach out to the people. We have various, experts in various disciplines. Forge your path in terms of your career. And they say it's not necessary that as a journalist you have to work in a newsroom. The space has really expanded and we have a bigger platform. So I think we need to think beyond that and to see how we tell stories in a way that we impact the lives of people, the lives of communities, and even impact the way a country is being governed. It's actually possible.
Judy, thank you so much for those remarks. We have a question from Dr. Nancy Booker. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. She asks, is there thinking around how to curate the different stories of women in media leadership? I'm going to direct this to Carol, but let me say this in line with that. One of the things that we're really looking to do here at Baraza is to do more kind of storytelling around the Kenyan media space. So just committing some resources to telling stories about amazing women leaders and also media innovations, and basically just keeping tabs on what's happening in this ecosystem. So that's certainly something that is at the top of my mind. But Carol, I don't know how this question lands with you in terms of what can we do to tell the stories of women leaders in media?
Well, firstly, thank you to Dr. Booker for giving us time today and being one of the mentors. So the mentees will notice that the courses that they will be doing will be through our platform called Journalism Now. And on the same platform where they will be accessing the courses, we will be able to share stories from the mentees about their leadership journey, so to speak, that we can share those to the wider Thomson community. We'll also be highlighting the stories of mentors and mentees on websites, on our website and on social media. And this also reaches quite a large audience. So that is kind of the two ways that we're planning to tap into our mentees and our mentors' journey through this process, through journalism now and through the website, and then through social media amplification as well.
All right. I think with what you have shared, combined with what I have been thinking about, I think combined, with our forces combined, we can curate those important stories of women in media leadership. Judy, I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in. I can see your hand is raised before I move on to the next question.
Yeah, it's just what Dr. has said. I would really love to say that. When I saw this book, when I had my baby and, my first baby girl, one of the books that I came across is the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. It actually tells the stories of the women, the amazing women, the great women. And in there is actually a Kenyan, the late Professor Wangari Maathai. And I think having such stories to be able to speak, to younger girls, to journalists who are in training, who are in universities and in colleges, and even just stories of women who've been able to break the glass ceiling, the editors, the editorial directors, the producers, the directors, the great writers that we have in the industry in Kenya, just having those stories on paper, so that in a book, so that someone can be able to be, it's the empowerment. It's the fact that when you read a story, there's always a bit of you that you see in another woman, and you say, yes, if she did it, then I can do it. So Dr. that's a very, like it's something that I would love to see, as an outcome of this.
For sure. I know Morris is already thinking of event ideas and program ideas around this. But let me move on to what I think is our last question. Pamela Sitoni is on the call, one of our mentors. Thank you, Pam, so much for making the time to be here. I know you're super busy. Pam asks, I'm hoping this mentorship will give our mentees staying power in media. Was there some commitment on this prior to selection? Pam, it's interesting that you ask this question. I have to tell everyone my history. Pam was my editor at the East African way back, not so long ago. But I know she's excited to see that I am still in this space, that the staying power is there. That, and I know part of the reason why she asked this is because we have all witnessed, if you've been in the media for long enough, you see the rate at which women exit the media is so much higher than I think our male counterparts. Many of the, the cohort that I started with moved on to PR roles, to different other kinds of roles, even left the media industry altogether for many different reasons, right? I think the thing that cuts across is just not feeling supported enough, and also not feeling that you had a clear path for growth, or that your career was being supported, right? Your dreams or your goals were being supported, and also how it fits into the rest of your life. So Judy, I can see your hand is still up. Please go ahead if you'd like to weigh in.
No, yeah? It's been up. Let me just put it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So Pam, what I'll say about that is that the 12 finalists who were selected, I mean, really, really stood out in terms of their potential for future growth and for future roles and bigger roles in leadership. That was part of the application where we asked them to talk about what they want to do and where they see themselves, right? And of course, that's a very kind of fuzzy question that is asked all the time. But our 12 mentees today gave strong answers that made us confident that they were just not in a revolving door. They were not just, in a revolving door into media spaces, but had some level of commitment and, vision for themselves. I started in the newsroom about 10 years ago, and I can say that I don't feel like myself when I've not written an important story or even a story in X number of months, right? It's just in me. Like, even when I'm doing this role as curator of Baraza Lab, which is a bit more of a high level and organizational and connector role, at the end of the day, I still pitch to publications. I still get rejections. I'm still excited when an editor wants to work with me. So I'm still in that space of wanting to do more. I certainly don't feel like I've even scratched the surface of all the things that I want to write about. I feel like I have many more years left in the media if God gives me that life. So I just want to encourage our mentees. When you're a woman in this space, you see so many of your female colleagues leaving, and you ask yourself, why am I still here? But I think with the right kind of support and the right kind of wind beneath your wings, that you'll be able to achieve and get to the place that you expressed in your applications. And I'm really hopeful and optimistic and confident and positive that this fund will be part of that for you. I think there's one more question. This is coming from one of our mentees. Helen asks, does Thomson Foundation and Baraza Lab have any expectations from us during and after the program? I think we answered a bit of that during the orientation call we had with you, the mentees. But just to reiterate, your relationship with your mentor depends a lot on your initiative. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of that connection as much as you can. Of course, in an organized way, right? So book time with them, and importantly, be working on something that you think they could weigh in and enrich your own work, right? And the expectation from Thomson Foundation is for you to complete the courses that have been assigned to you. I think Berna is still on this call, and in case of, I think we may need to have maybe the first session with our mentees to make them a bit more confident and comfortable with that learning platform. But certainly as we go along, we'll always be checking in, like we said in our call with the mentors, we'll be checking in to see on progress, to be troubleshooting, to see what's working well and what needs to be changed. So it's not that we are launching today and then we walk away and then in 3 months' time, we're expecting magic. But magic is something that we create together. At Baraza, we are very strong believers in co-creation. So we are here to build this thing together. All right, I think that's all the questions, and I'm so happy that we are right on time. So I'm going to ask Caro to give us the closing remarks as CEO of Thomson Foundation. Just that mic drop moment that will make us leave this call ready to be amazing women in media. I think I also need to hear it as moderator. Because like I said, for me, I'm still very much feeling like I have a lot more to do. Caro, please.
Well, thank you so much, Christine, for guiding us really well through this past hour. It's never easy to do, and you've done it really, really well, and we're on time. Best of luck to all our mentors and mentees on the 3-month journey that starts today. Enjoy it, grow as women, as leaders, and as people in the news over the next few months. And help us build a network that can start small, but be very ambitious, whether that is local or outside borders, or in our newsrooms, or with our stories. It's a golden opportunity. Enjoy it.
All right, with that, we are right at the top of the hour. I would say at this point, thank you so much for making the time to be here. It's not easy during these COVID times, to be present on a Zoom call. But I thank you for your presence, your questions, your engagement. As moderator, I always take it as a gift when people give me their attention. So thank you. You are free to leave the call at your leisure, as Kenyans say. For us at Baraza, we are going to hang back a bit in case anyone needs to reach out to us directly, anyone on the call for any reason. Congratulations to the mentees for making it to be part of this program, and to the mentors as well. You have achieved so much in your lives that is so worthy of recognition, which is why we asked you to be part of our program, and we thank you for gifting us with your time and your expertise and your experiences. Sawa sawa. I see people on the chat. We're not going to, close this immediately in case folks want to say something to each other in the chat. If you'd like to ask for anyone's contacts or any other kind of relationship or question or inquiry that you would want us to have, we're here for the next maybe 3 minutes. And then we can bid each other adieu. The last thing I want to say is please tweet about the Bettina Fund. Share this on your socials, shout about it, especially the mentees. Please shout. Use your Instagram, Twitter, everything that you have at your disposal to make sure that you're shouting about it. This is something that women, we should always do. We should always shout about our achievements. We at Baraza, we're going to shout about you so we can do it together and be louder collectively. Good. Judy says she's going to shout. I'm excited. To the mentors as well, please shout about this. We are proud that you're part of us, and I hope that you are proud that you're part of us. So please, let's get this out there so that people know what we're doing. And the more people know about this, the faster and the easier, I think, we can learn quickly, iterate quickly, know what's working and what isn't, know what we can change, and as Njoki challenged us early in this call, to scale. All right, we're excited about what is in the coming weeks and months. Margaret says she's excited for what's ahead. So am I. I'm excited. Sawa sawa. Thank you again, everyone. Please head over to your socials now. As you close this, just open a tab. Close this and open your Twitter or your Facebook, or LinkedIn or any of your other channels. All right. Thank you very much to everyone, and let's keep in touch.